G'day and welcome to the Hunting Connection podcast. My name is Zach Williams and I am your host. Here we'll connect you with hunters, fishers and outdoor enthusiasts from around the globe. This podcast will share hunting and fishing stories including past experiences and tackle the tough hunting stereotypes our community faces. We hope to be a positive influence to those outside the community while also having a laugh along the way. Hope you enjoy the podcast. G'day and welcome to another episode of Hunting Connection Podcast. Welcome to another year. Happy 2025. This is the first episode for the year. And on today's episode, we've got Tony from the Outerside Podcast. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, especially short notice and over the New Year Chrissy break.
Yeah, I'm doing all right for someone that said they weren't going to work over the break. I've been doing a lot of work, but it's all good, man.
I bet. I only sent you a message the other day, just after I seen you come across your video on the lock gates in New South Wales. So I seen that was blowing up pretty quick. So I thought I'd jump in quick and see if I could get you on the podcast to chat about it and chat about yourself and chat about your journey as a podcaster and.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's this is the second podcast that I've been on that's not my own. So forgive me for not following the format. If it's always interesting when you do it yourself and you know what you're gonna get asked, and then when you're on the other end of it, it's you feel like you understand what your guests feel, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I've done multiple other podcasts now, and it's always like you do it all the time, but it's always nerve-wracking to do someone else's.
Yeah, the shoe's on the other foot, man.
That's it. Well, let's jump straight into it. Whereabouts are you from?
So I grew up in Sydney. I live on the New South Wales Central Coast now. I've been up here for a few years, but Sydney born and bred, lived sort of all over Sydney. And then my wife told me that she wanted to live near the water, and that meant we couldn't stay in Sydney anymore because the property prices down there are just silly. So we moved to about an hour north, just on the Central Coast between Sydney and Newcastle.
Yeah, beautiful. And had growing up in that area shape your love for the outdoors?
So my dad actually left and moved overseas when I was quite young. So he left when I was 3 and my parents separated. And I had 2 older sisters and my mum. So it was 3 girls and me in the house. But what was really good was my mum made a really concerted effort to make sure I still got that exposure. So we did family camping trips. Whenever we went camping, I was just the quintessential jetty rat. I was always fishing at every possible opportunity. I can't even, I remember when I first went fishing, it was down at Sussex Inlet on the New South Wales South Coast, and it was like just with an old hand reel and a servo prawn, but it just started like a passion that I still continue to this day. Like I'm obsessed with fishing, and I've been out fishing all day on the boat. So that's where it started. And then, my mum made sure that I was in Scouts and I was in Cubs before that. And I went to an all-boys school, so we had cadets. And so I had lots of opportunities to go hiking and to go camping and to get out amongst it. And it really just cemented that love for the outdoors at a really young age.
That's awesome. How old were you when you first went fishing there?
Oh, man, I was like 4 or 5, like proper young.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you can still remember that first experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't have a great deal of memories from my childhood for whatever reason. And I've only got sort of like little snapshots from my childhood, and that's one of them that I still remember to this day. And it was reinforced because while we were camping down there was a crazy bushfire, and we got evacuated from the campsite that we're staying in. So that whole trip is like just indelibly burnt into my memory, pardon the pun.
That's awesome. Did you actually get anything on that first fish, or?
Mate, I couldn't even tell you, to be honest. I remember fishing. I probably didn't even catch anything, but it was just that whole like anticipation, and it was the expectation, anticipation, and it's still like I talk about it all the time. You know when someone's a mad keen fisher when they can go out and catch nothing and still have a good time, and then still go back the next day and have another crack. And trust me, mate, there's plenty of fishless trips. Maybe I'm not that good at it.
Oh man, that's it. I grew up hunting and fishing. I did a lot of trips with my grandparents when I was younger, and would go to a coastal town and there'd be a jetty, and the first thing I'd do is go straight up that jetty. Nan and Pop would be setting up the caravan, and I'd wander down to the jetty. Rod's not even unpacked out the car yet, and I'll be going down and chatting to everyone fishing along there. Having any luck, and this is when I'm like 5 or 6, and an hour or two would kick by, and Nan and Pop would come look for me, and I'm sitting there with someone else's fishing rod, helping them fish and catching fish.
100%, dude. I've got my mum was really good at documenting our childhood, like with photography, and back then you printed everything, and she's got like countless photo albums, and I look through some of them and I'm like, who's that I'm fishing with? And she's like, I don't know, just like some random that I've befriended on the wharf to to borrow some bait or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I think now I fish heaps up here on the coast. That's a big part of why I moved up here. And what's great about the Central Coast in particular is there's heaps of kids out fishing, and like you can just see the frothers. Like there's the kids that are like doing it and don't really care, and then there's the kids that are like down there on their pushy at first light, and they're like right into it, and they got good gear and soft plastics, and I try and like help them out as much as I can and really foster it, because I know, well, I'd rather see kids out fishing than sitting on their phones or, I don't know, playing Fortnite or whatever kids do these days.
Yeah, man, that's it. I was one of those kids, like, whenever I was away, I was just fishing constantly. And, I've got kids of my own now. I've got a 10-year-old and a almost 5-year-old. And this Christmas break, we've been, hitting the jetty and the river and, chasing squid and crabs. And, it doesn't matter. Like we've been, catching a bunch of undersized crabs and small squid. And it's just been fun, keeping them nice and active. Not yesterday, day before, we went out to the river and we got about 20 carp, and, the kids were having a blast, just catching them and then whacking them on the head. And, that's all my crab bait now. So I'm heading out in the kayak tomorrow, and I got a bunch of carp for crab bait.
Yeah, how good. And I think like the beauty of it, kids are so easily pleased with fishing as well. Like they get bites, they're happy. If they catch an undersized bream, they're happy. It's not about catching PBs or these exotic species. They're just happy to be out there having a crack. And I think I've got an 8-month-old daughter, so she's a little bit too young to be fishing, but you can bet your bottom dollar that she'll be out there on the boat with me as soon as possible. I mean, we've already got her out on the boat, and she's looking around and watching me fish, and so she's already got that, I suppose, subconscious exposure to it. But I think it's really important that kids see the reality of it, and something I'm a huge advocate for is for kids, but people in general, to have a better understanding of where their food comes from, and the fact that if you eat meat, or even if you don't, everything that lives needs something else to die to sustain life. And I think that's a really important message that we tend to, I think it's a little bit disconnected in today's society. People that just go to the shops and buy food in pre-packaged little nice sort of clean sanitary form, and they don't really appreciate where their food's coming from. And the reality of it is that, things got to die for us to stay alive.
Yeah, man, that's it, and that's something I preach on this podcast quite a bit, and yeah, it's like it's interesting getting out with the kids. Having the two boys, they're completely opposite. But the oldest, he loves flicking lures out. So this going to the jetty and him flicking squid jags out, he absolutely loves it. Just standing there flicking squid jags. But if he's sitting down waiting for bites, he's bored shitless. Where the younger ones, he's 5, so of course he's not going to be casting lures out, but he's quite content just waiting there. He'll be playing or talking to people on the jetty, and so I call him over when he gets a bite, and he's stoked that way. So it's interesting watching the different types.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, I do a lot of both. I fish with lures, and then I do a lot of rock fishing, so float fishing for drummer and for ladrick and that sort of stuff. I appreciate both of them, but I think lure fishing in particular, it's like the hunting element, right? Like it's active, and you're thinking about the presentation a lot more, and where you're pinning your casts, as opposed to that sort of like chuck it out and wait sort of thing.
Yeah, it all, with me, I love all of it, but it all depends on my mood, you know. I could go out and flick lures for hours or squid jags for hours, or I'll just go to the river and a tin of corn and just sit there with the two rods out and just catch carp all day and just sit there and have a few drinks, and I'm completely fine with that as well. So
yeah, I think mine's more species dependent, right? Like, there's not much of not that I know of anyway. There's not much of a lure fishery for drummer and luderick and that sort of stuff. But at the moment where I live, it's pelagic season. So, mate, I'm putting a couple of 100 casts in every morning, chasing bonito and frigate mackerel and kings and that sort of stuff, which I think is great fun as well. And I'm quite happy to sit there and, I don't know, 300-400 casts in a session, particularly if you're not catching many.
Yeah, that's it. And I've found these days, and you'll come to learn this having kids, is you don't actually get to fish that much. You're just constantly baiting hooks and untangling lines and tying new rigs because they've got snags.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's funny, we've been I've been taking my daughter out on the boat with my wife, and we've also got a Jack Russell pup that's a year old, so he's psychotic, and we've been doing like family days on the boat. And I take fishing gear, but it's not fishing trips. Like the neighbour, I get home and he's like, "Oh, did you catch anything?" I'm like, "Mate, it's not a fishing trip. It's a family day." So today I went out with my two brother-in-laws, and I just said to the missus, she goes, "Oh, are you going to take the dog?" I said, "Absolutely not. He's going to get in the way. Today's a fishing day. We're going out and we're going to fish hard all day." And that's what we did, which was really good. And I suppose for me, it's, the adjustment of now having a kid. It just means that I got to time my runs, so I get up when everyone's still asleep and when it's still dark, and go down and have a flick for an hour or two, and come back and do the family thing, and then go out again at night when they're all asleep.
Yeah, man, that's it. Fishing with a family is completely different. Because I used to go out with, a couple bottles of water and be out all day, whether it's 15 degrees or it's 45 degrees. I can sit there all day. If I'm hot, I'll go for a quick swim. But then you have to take all this stuff into account when you're actually going out with a family. It's like, all right, I need a toilet close by. I need, a playground's going to be heaps better if there's one close by.
Just the amount of stuff you've got to take, right? Like,
oh, dude,
it's just all the stuff. It's crazy. So it's but it's it's been fun, and it's been a good learning curve for me, and I just can't wait until I can take her out with just me and her and go on proper fishing missions. That'll be sick.
Yeah, no. It is the best. Like, as much as fishing by yourself and catching, all the good species, the edible species, or catching and spending all day out, there's nothing better than actually going out with the family and watching the kids, whether it's catching a bunch of undersized fish or, small tommies, small crabs, and, and throwing them back. Like, the kids love throwing undersized crabs back. And, the last couple of days up at the river, we've had the shrimp nets out, because we got a little freshwater shrimp in the Murray, and you're not allowed to keep the female ones with eggs. So the kids are going through the shrimp nets, and they're taking all the like checking all the shrimp for eggs and throwing all the shrimp back that have eggs, and they absolutely love it and like fighting over who gets to throw the shrimp back.
So good, man. And there's so many good aspects to that, right? Like teaching them to be responsible, teaching them about sustainable fisheries, and also just learning about all the different creatures out there, like even today when I was out with my two brother-in-laws, like one of them caught this eel looking thing, and I don't know what it was, man. It looked like a snake, but just this real long, thin eel thing with a dirty, great mouth on it. And I just looked at the boys and said, well, I won't repeat exactly what I said, but basically it was get that thing out of my boat. But also, I said to them, man, I've fished my whole life and I've never seen one of those things before. Like, it's all, and I'm still learning, but for kids, everything's new, everything's exciting, and every time they'd see a new species, like, oh yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, man, that's it. And those eels make a absolute mess of your lines. I remember catching small eels off of the jetties, and they just absolutely wrap up in everything.
Yeah, I don't know if you got conger eels down where you are, but in the Hawkesbury where I did a lot of fishing growing up, and I still do, it's quite local to me, there's these conger eels, which are these bloody great brown things with a mouth like a dog. And mate, I'll tell you what, you will only bring one of them into your boat once. They go absolutely ape in the boat and just smash everything up. And the one time we brought one on the boat, it was at night. in the middle of the night we brought this thing in, and I tell you what, I thought about getting out of the boat before that thing did, because it was psycho.
That's nuts. That's nuts. Before the podcast, you said you enjoyed hunting as well. So how'd you get into hunting? How'd you transition from from fishing to hunting?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I don't claim to be a great hunter. I do a lot of shooting, and I do a lot of like feral animal pest control. I've got mates that have got properties, and so shoot a lot of pests. I have got a restricted game license for hunting state forests in New South Wales, and I really haven't utilised it, just with having the baby and everything else going on. But yeah, I don't really know how it all started, man. I just I've always been interested in guns. And then, probably 10 years ago, I decided to get my license. And I was actually really keen to shoot clays. That was the kind of driving force behind me getting my license. So I've done quite a lot of skeet shooting and trap shooting. In Sydney, quite close to where I was living at the time, there's the old Olympic shooting facility from the 2000 Olympics, which is an absolutely sick place to go shoot clays. So that's what prompted me to get my gun license, and then started target shooting. And, as you, because, it's you get excited and you start buying more rifles. And then from there, it was really just, I've got lots of mates that live on properties or that are farmers, and I love getting out and spending time in those kind of environments. And so naturally the progression was around, culling animals, and even, shooting roos under permit in New South Wales if someone's got a tag that they need to clear up some roos on their property. So I've done quite a bit of that.
Yep.
But really, I guess what I'm super keen to do is get out and shoot public land. So state forest hunting in New South Wales is awesome. Like the fact that we've got so much land available, and it's absolutely an underutilized resource. As you would know, it's such a clean protein. It's organic meat. There's no cruelty. There's none of that stuff. It's just an animal living its life in a place that it probably shouldn't be, and then it's lights out. And then utilising that animal and feeding your family with it, I think it's something that I really aspire to do more of. And I want my daughter to grow up with it normal. I want it to be normalised that animals die and then they come into the house and they get processed and they get eaten. I really want her to have that understanding from the get-go.
Yeah, that's it. Because my oldest is my stepson, so he has been slowly introduced to it. Once he was a little bit older, 4 or 5, I'd take him out for walks, and then take him out spotlighting, put all the blankets in the back of the car while we were shooting rabbits, hares and foxes, take a bunch of lollies and chips and, make it fun for him. And then he's come out on a few deer hunts and a few other hunts. So he's enjoyed that. But my youngest has had no choice. He was less than a week old and I had him strapped to my chest, butchering deer on the bench when he was less than a week old. And then as soon as he could hold his head up in the carry-on backpacks, I was taking him for walks to check trail cameras with the bow in the hand. And his like I said, he's almost 5, so he's been coming out since about 7-8 months old. So
yeah, it's so good, man. I just think it's so invaluable for kids to have that exposure, and particularly at a young age, right before they can get influenced by others and opinions of various, people within society, that the kids are exposed to all sorts of stuff without getting too carried away with the politics of it. But I think it's great for them to have the reality from an early age, because then it's normal.
That's it. Like I mentioned with the kids donging the carp today, today we're in a public-ish area, right on the riverfront. Lots of people around, and we're catching lots of these small carp. And, there's mums and kids coming out and checking out the carp we're catching. And, my youngest picks, he's like, yeah, here's the carp. Here, have a look, have a touch. And then he picks up the hammer and dongs it on the head. And these young mums with these, 2-3-year-old kids are just looked horrified with this 4-year-old with a rubber mallet, just quick bang on the head, picking it up, and then takes it over and puts it in the bin. Because here in South Australia, we're not allowed to actually put the carp back into the river. Our laws are still a bit backwards. Like Victoria, you can kill a carp and chop it up and put it in the river so it sinks. where, some other states are a bit backwards and outdated because you got these people that still think that carp can spread their eggs even though they're dead, but they actually have a spawning season and like a proper spawn. So it's a bit silly, but then having to explain that to these people in the bank why we're killing these small fish was pretty funny, and definitely an eye opener for them. They're going to be taking that back home and tell them, oh, we went to the river today and this kid picks up
crazy little kid with a hammer.
So yeah, my youngest is going to start school this year with some interesting stories.
Oh, that's fantastic, mate. It's fantastic. And, those young mums and those people that were probably quite shocked to see a kid hitting a fish in the head with a hammer. I'm sure they all eat meat. And, maybe they don't even know that carp is such a massive problem for us in this country. So, again, it's an opportunity to educate people, and I think it's so important that we do.
Yeah, that's it. I gave them a quick run through for as long as they stayed around, but as soon as they seen the blood, they were a bit squirmish.
Very good.
So what was your journey into getting the R license? How long have you held that, and have you done too many hunts in state forests?
No, I've been for a few walks, and I think that the main thing about R license hunting that I've learned is anywhere close to Sydney is under extreme pressure. And it's not just from hunters, it's dirt bike riders, it's four-wheel drivers, it's just general camping, it's noise. And so I've been for a couple of walks. The only time I've seen deer in a state forest is when I'm driving my extremely loud Land Cruiser along a fire trail and fallow have run in front of the car. And I'm like, of course. But when I'm armed bushwalking and I'm actually looking for them, I'm yet to see any. So from the few mates of mine that have been doing it a little bit longer than me, their message to me is just get as far away from Sydney as you possibly can, and lots of time on the feet. So I guess the challenge is, it's the time. It's being able to dedicate the time to go out and I get not be selfish, but do something by myself, particularly with a young family. So in terms of how I got it, the process is pretty straightforward in New South Wales. You need to go and do a course, which is very similar to the firearms handling course insofar as it's like, don't shoot people, safe handling around forestry workers and other users of state forests, which is all really important. So I think it's worthwhile. But getting the license itself was, as I said, quite simple. I got it, and then COVID occurred. So I got my R license like a month before the first COVID lockdown. And I was in Western Sydney at the time in the Blacktown Council, which was one of the most locked down local government areas in New South Wales. So I spent the best part of 8 months locked in my house. Didn't get too much hunting done then. Went for a couple of walks, and then didn't shoot anything in the forest. And then, we had our daughter. So I'm at that point now where we're just getting over that first sort of 6 month shock to the system, shall we say, of like, what the hell do I do with this thing? I've got to keep someone else alive now. But this year in particular, man, I'm really keen to get out in the rut and see what I can find, and start to do a bit more of that stuff.
Yeah, beautiful. Have you heard the fallow in the rut in person yet?
Yeah, I've heard them on a property. I've got a mate up in Queensland actually that's got a property that's got quite a few deer on it, but he really likes them, and he won't let me shoot them. So we go up there and we do a lot of culling and shoot dogs and whatever. But we'll be sitting on his porch on his at his place, and I'm like watching deer walk through the paddock, and I'm like just staring at him, and he goes, "This really hurts you, doesn't it?" I'm like, "Come on, man." But it's with the right intention. He said that there used to be a lot of deer on his property. He's got like 4,000 acres up there, and they've got a lot of poaching problems up there.
Yeah.
And they just come in and hammer all the deer. So his way of thinking is if he can let the population start to build on his property, and once he gets to a critical mass that he thinks is enough to sustain itself, then he'll allow me to go up there and knock a few for me, which I think is a good sort of way of thinking. But yeah, I've heard him roaring up there. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the red's roaring is crazy, but the fallow croaking is it's completely different. It's two crazy ends of the spectrum, as you know.
Yeah, right.
Have you heard koalas mating?
Yes.
Like that snorting, croaking sound. Fallow are very similar to that. And you know, when some people are fresh to hunting and they've heard croaks online, like they'll hear a koala going at it, and they'll be like looking for deer, and it's hilarious. Sure. It's very similar, but it's like the red roar is the craziest, but it's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'll have to put that on the to-do list this year.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Even if you can get out for a walk, and just listen to it wherever you've got some fallow populations, and you know, I did my proper first trip to New South Wales last year, hunted private property, but Cody, the fella that property we were hunting, he like as he drove us from Sydney to where he lives, he was just pointing out all the public land. It's like that's just insane, you know. Being from South Australia, we got no public land here that we can hunt at all, and you know, with the bow hunting ban, it's just closing things up left, right, and centre now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think we are so lucky in New South Wales for the moment. And I have to say that because at the moment we're looking down the barrel of a lot of state forests being handed over to national parks, and obviously that means no hunting. Through the petition that I'm running at the moment, I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I read something on the Timber New South Wales website the other day that said that over 50% of the total land mass of state forest in New South Wales has been handed to national parks in the last 20 years, and another 50% of the remainder is slated to be handed over in the next 5. And one of the other major things that's going on at the moment that I'm actively advocating against is the Great Koala National Park. So the state Labor government here in New South Wales is basically planning to lock up a huge tract of land from Taree north to the Queensland border. All the existing national parks, both coastal and inland, which is about 140,000 hectares, but as part of the plan, they also want to convert another 176,000 hectares of state forest into national park and lock the whole joint up to protect koalas. And, you know, that covers a huge amount of really good hunting land on the mid-north coast and obviously inland, and also a lot of really important four-wheel driving areas. And I can tell you I've spent countless hours in all those areas and I've never seen a koala. So I wonder what we're protecting. So, look, I think that the message is we've got to enjoy it while we can, because there's no guarantee that we're going to have it forever.
And numbers speak. If enough people can make a ruckus about it, it can overturn these things. And combined, we have the numbers to make some serious change in this country. I'm not sure if you're aware of Carly from Victorians Against the Great Forest National Park, or whatever it is.
Carly Murphy's an absolute legend, man. I've been talking to her quite a bit, you know, with the Facebook group that she's running down there, and I've had a few chats to her recently. She's been very supportive of the petition I'm running up in New South Wales, even though it doesn't directly affect her or her community. She understands that it's the most important thing for all of us who are advocating for change and really pushing for protection of our rights in terms of public land access, that exposure is the number one thing. And I was having a chat to someone today from another organisation that's actively working to defend our rights, and that's called Save Our Summits. And when I was talking to him, you know, I said the thing that I'm learning faster and faster at the moment is that the people who are anti-hunting, anti-four-wheel drive, those extreme left-wing greenies, they're really good at coordinating themselves and making a ruckus. And it seems like if you just read the comments on some of my socials at the moment, you'd think that there's millions of them, but they're just very good at at getting on there and really, I guess, putting their point of view forward. And I think outdoor recreation communities like hunters, four-wheel drivers, and even, hikers and rock climbers and all those sorts of people, we've really got to come together and try and find some common ground, because when you combine all those communities, there's so many of us. There's so many people that appreciate the ability to access public land in some form or other. And if you listen to those militant greenies, they just want to lock us out. And it's not about, no four-wheel driving or no hunting. They just don't want anyone in there. And so when I've got hikers saying, just walk. It's like, yeah, but what about when you can't walk in there? What about when it affects you? Are you going to care then? Because that's the direction that it's going. And I think, we've got to try and work together as much as we possibly can to defend our rights.
Oh, 100%, man. Like I came across Kylie's group probably early to mid last year, hit her up straight away, said, come on the podcast, let's chat. And she is, like you said, an absolute legend. She doesn't hunt, she doesn't fish, she doesn't four-wheel drive, she collects wood, and that's about it. And, you've got someone as passionate as her, just absolutely doing a fantastic job. Like, she is getting shit left, right, and center. And I like I tell her to keep her chin up. I've got my fair share from anti-hunters, and I know how cruel and how devastating some of that comments and messages and shit you can get could be. But yeah, she's doing an absolutely fantastic job. So when I came across your video on TikTok, I tagged her straight away. I wasn't sure if she knew or a bunch of other people, but yeah. So give us a little rundown on that video you posted up, and how'd you come across that?
So I've got to take a few steps back here. A few months ago now, I came across a petition that was started by somebody else. And in New South Wales, we've got the New South Wales Legislative Council, which is the upper house of New South Wales Parliament. Recently, the last, I think, couple of years, they've changed the way they engage with the public in terms of allowing the public to raise issues with the upper house, rather than going through your local member or trying to find a member of the Legislative Council and then engaging with them to advocate for a particular cause. They've launched an e-petition system where you can go on the website, fill in, you've got 130 words, so it's pretty limited, but you've got to be careful and you've got to be clever in terms of choosing what the message is and what you're asking of the Parliament. But I came across an e-petition started by a guy called Tony Crooke, who runs the Australian Recreation Union, and it was around access to national parks. And it wasn't so much around closures and access to particular areas, but it was around what you're able to do in national parks. I thought it was a really good cause. I got behind it. I shared it on my socials. At the time, my podcast had only just kicked off, so I really didn't have a huge audience there. And my other social media, which I've had for a number of years, is very heavily four-wheel drive focused. So, I do a lot of pretty hardcore four-wheel driving, a lot of content in that space. So that audience is nuts about four-wheel driving. So when I share stuff about hunting, or fishing, they kind of don't care. And this comes back to the point I was making earlier about we've all got to kind of care about what each other are doing, even if we don't do it ourselves. So anyway, I came across this petition, I shared it, signed it myself. The petition closed. It had, I think, about 6,000 signatures, just over. And in the upper house, if you get less than 20,000 signatures, they basically just acknowledge that there was a petition and then they don't have to do anything about it. If you get over 20K, we'll see what happens, but allegedly that forces a debate in Parliament. Now, whether that's a 20-minute conversation or otherwise, at least airs the issue that's being brought to the upper house. The response from Penny Sharp, who's the New South Wales Minister for Climate, Environment, Culture and a couple of other things, which is a very weird mix of portfolios, she put out a press release in response to the petition, and it basically said, I'm paraphrasing here, but everything's under control, doesn't need to be looked at, go away.
Yeah.
And when I read that response, it triggered me. I got the shits, quite frankly. It was such a dismissive response. Penny Sharp, I don't know her from a bar of soap, but inner city lefty, and you go, how much time have you spent in national parks? You're obviously not involved in the outdoor recreation pursuits that me and my mates and my family members are in. But for you to just dismiss this, and yeah, it didn't get 20,000 signatures, but 6,000 people is a lot of people. And anyway, it really upset me quite a lot, and it motivated me to take action. On my podcast in the last 6 months, which was the first 6 months of the show, I did not start it with an intention of being political in any way, shape or form. I didn't really have a plan, to be honest. Because of working in the four-wheel drive industry for a long time and being a mad keen fisher and being interested in hunting and all that sort of stuff, I've met some really cool people. So the whole point of the podcast was like, hey, I'm already chatting to cool people. Why don't I just put a camera in front of us, formalize it a little bit, record it and share those messages and share those stories with people? Because I get to talk to these people around the campfire or, whatever. Why don't I share them? And what happened, I guess, kind of organically, maybe subconsciously, I was leading the conversation that way. We started talking about things like land access and, on a slightly different topic around like the pressure we're under in regard to vehicle modifications and all of the different pressures that we're experiencing from all different angles as outdoor recreation enthusiasts, be it fishing closures of particular species in South Australia, for example, or in WA, or recently in New South Wales, we had a ban on targeting blue groper, which is just insanity. But anyway, that's another topic. But, I just feel like we're under so much pressure from so many different angles. So the people that I'm interviewing on my podcast, it affects them. And I've interviewed a lot of content creators, YouTubers, people that make a living from sharing what they do. And so not only are we putting people's recreational hobbies under threat, but in some cases we're putting their livelihood under threat. And as we kept talking about this more and more, and then the results of that petition came through, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. And I put a video up on my Instagram just talking about that particular petition. I read some of the response from Penny Sharp, and that video has been viewed 85,000 times. And the messages I was getting and the comments were like, oh, well, if we'd known about it, we would have signed it. And I went, okay, fair. And I wasn't going to say, well, I shared it. There weren't that many of them following me at that time. But it really gave me a bit of an inkling that there was a groundswell of support. And it was about connecting the dots, connecting the four-wheel drive community, connecting the hunting community, trying to bring some of these different communities together, because I think there's a lot of us. There's not much data, but I know just from, how many people listen to your show and how many people watch, fishing content on YouTube, that there's a huge number of us. So I thought, you know what, I can sit here and talk about it. I can whinge about it while we're camping or when you're at the pub, but no one else is going to do it. Or not no one else is going to do it, but who better than me, right?
Yeah.
My wife might have a different opinion of that, given how much time I've dedicated to this particular cause. But long story short, I reached out to John Ruddock, who's the leader of the Libertarian Party here in New South Wales, and he's a member of the Legislative Council. I just sent him an email and said, hey, I saw the results of the petition, and it's worth pointing out he sponsored the petition from Tony Garvin, so you need to have a member of the Legislative Council sponsor it in order for it to get up in the first place, to be open for signatures. And I'm talking about it like I know it, mate. I learned all this stuff in the last 6 months, so I'm definitely not a political expert, so don't anyone come to me for advice. I'm learning on the fly here. But look, I just emailed John Ruddock and I said, this is really disappointing. I think it was a worthwhile thing that should be debated in Parliament, something that's close to my heart, and the response from the minister was pretty crap. Can we talk about it? And he said, why don't you come into Parliament House for a meeting? So I did. So I lobbed in there, sat down with John and his chief of staff, and they sort of said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And they were really open to chatting, but they were trying to sort of understand, I think, what my angle was. And in politics, I'm sure they're used to everyone having a viewpoint of what's in it for me or some sort of hidden agenda. And I was really straight up. I just said, I grew up in the outdoors. I love the outdoors. I want my daughter to grow up in the outdoors. I want her to have the same opportunities I did, if not more. So what can we do? And John suggested that I put together some words for a petition. So I worked with those guys on that. He said, if you put together a petition that talks about access to national parks, I'll sponsor it for you. So yeah, I did it. I submitted the petition to the Legislative Council, I think it was late November. And then there was a bit of back and forth. I had to change some words. Apparently there are words that you're not allowed to use in a petition, like you can't say demand. So I had an administrator from the Parliament telling me that I had to change particular words. Maybe they were a little bit too forthright for them, shall we say. So anyway, you got to play ball with this, right? There's no point in trying to dig your heels in and fight with them. So anyway, we put the petition forward. It got approved and it went live on the 23rd of December. So terrible timing, right before Christmas. So I let it live for a couple of days. And then I spent Christmas with my family. And then on Boxing Day, I went up to Newcastle and spent the day with my wife's family. And halfway through the day, everyone's in the pool and eating and drinking. And I said, I got to duck out. And I brought my camera gear with me and I went and shot a video at a place not far from my mother-in-law's house, which coincidentally has a lot of locked gates. So I thought, you know what, there's no point in shooting this in the studio or anywhere else. Let's call it what it is. It's about access. It's about locked gates. I shot the video, put it live on my Instagram and on my YouTube channel. And so what's that? About a week, it's had 1.1 million views.
Crazy.
So yeah, it absolutely blew up. And of course you saw it on TikTok. Now I always say that I'm too old for TikTok, and I still think I am too old for TikTok. But I started one maybe, I think it was early December, purely just so that I had the name, because I had the Outerside Podcast. I wanted to make sure that I secured that. I put a couple of like reels up that I'd posted on my Instagram previously, and I think they had like 3 views each or something. I had 2 followers. And then I posted this video that I made around the petition, and I think that's had like 300,000 views now. And apparently there's an audience there that I'm not getting elsewhere. So maybe now I've got to post more on TikTok. But, it's interesting to see the different audiences, I guess, across YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. I've been reading all of the comments. So as I said to you before we started filming, that's basically been a full-time job for me for the last week. But it's really interesting to see different demographics, obviously, and different perspectives on it. But I guess the really frustrating part for me was when I released that video, which was on, I think it was on the night of Boxing Day, we got 10,000 signatures in 2 days. And the frustrating part was then the petition stopped accepting signatures. And I was getting hundreds of messages from people saying, we want to sign it, but we can't. It's giving us an error message. And I started the petition, so I couldn't sign it again. But I did some digging, and on the Legislative Council website, they've got a reCAPTCHA, so a little checkbox that says, I am not a robot. And apparently the New South Wales Parliament is using a free version of that software, which means that it can only be clicked 10,000 times a month.
Oh, wow.
So we got to 10,990 signatures, and then it stopped working and it said this site has exceeded the reCAPTCHA limit. Now, I emailed the Libertarian Party straight away. I emailed the administrator I'd been dealing with at the Legislative Council to get the petition up in the first place. And I sent another email just to their generic support. And I got a bunch of out-of-office replies saying, we're off until the 6th of January. But as you know, the important thing with social media when you've got such a great deal of momentum is to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
And it was killing me, man. You know, I was just watching the view counts on these videos go up like 100,000, 150,000 a day. And I'm getting hundreds of messages from people trying to sign it. And the biggest challenge, right? Like, I think at the time we had like 600, 700,000 views on that video, and we managed to get just under 11,000 signatures. Now, not everybody that watched the video is going to be supportive of it. I get that. But even people that are, just getting them to click the link and go and fill out the petition, which takes like 5 seconds. You put in your first name, your last name, your email address, tick that you're from New South Wales, tick that you're not a robot. It's seconds, but trying to get people to actually do it is really difficult. So it was burning me that this thing went down. To William from the Libertarian Party's credit, he was the first one to email me back. He's still the only one within New South Wales Parliament that's actually responded to any of my emails and said, I've already let the IT team know they're troubleshooting. I said, there's no troubleshooting, man. You can get a reCAPTCHA license, which allows 100,000 users per month, and it's $8 a month. I'll pay the $8. Get the frigging thing going again. And obviously, you know, he couldn't do that. So the petition went down on the 30th, about 2 a.m. on the Sunday, and it didn't come back online until the 1st of January when the new month clicked over in America. So it was actually the night of the first here, and all of a sudden it started accepting signatures again. Now, from a positive perspective, we've had nearly 1,000 additional signatures since then, but that's 1,000 signatures in 2 days where we were getting 5,000 a day. So extremely frustrating that a ridiculous system issue like that stopped the momentum. And the question that I have for them, and that I'm going to continue to ask, is if there's 10,000 users per month, how do we get to 10,990 before it stopped? I don't want to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, but it seemed very convenient that it would just stop in its tracks like that. And I guess this really just points out one of the underlying issues that we have at the moment, and I think that is a mistrust that we have of our own government. Like, elected officials that are voted in, and, you know, we're meant to trust them. They're meant to be our representatives, but across the community, there's just such a lack of trust. I think because of COVID and since then, it just seems to be getting worse, and there's a lack of transparency and there's a lack of trust. And it's hard, you know, it's hard to deal with. And when all my followers are there going, oh, that's a bit convenient. Do you think that this was intentional? It's like, I'm trying to play nice here, but man, it makes you question everything, right?
Don't worry. As soon as you were saying it, my mind went straight to that seems a little set up to stop the momentum. You know, it just seems very, very convenient, and you know, it's not great to think like that. But you know, being here in South Australia, I was pushing this bow hunting ban petition hard. I didn't start it, but I was pushing it hard, and man, we weren't getting any traction on it. Just like, I don't think it even got to 10,000 signatures, and it was open to Australia wide for it, you know. But it's just so difficult. And you know, like the ban here with Susan Close, she knew that it wasn't going to get through to Parliament, so she went behind Parliament and she went to the Governor General and got it signed in as a proclamation. So she didn't even have to go through Parliament to do it. And hearing that, and you know, I understand how frustrated you were when this whole petition thing started, because I feel exactly the same about the bow hunting ban here. It's just so frustrating that these people that are supposed to be working for us and passing our stuff through Parliament, they're pushing their own agendas through and locking us out of these amazing places. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, it's just wrong, man. And I think something that I probably need to do a follow-up video, because in the first video, I was trying to keep it under 90 seconds. And the reason I was trying to keep it under 90 seconds was so that Instagram would show people who weren't following me.
Yeah.
At the time, I had 4,500 followers on the podcast page. I've got about 24,000 on my four-wheel drive page. So I collaborated the two accounts to spread the reach, but I had a feeling that it was going to go pretty viral, and I wanted to make sure that it would be shown to as many people as possible. So I kept it quite short. The downside of that was that I didn't explain in full detail what the petition was about.
Yeah.
I said it was about access. I said it was about transparency. I was assuming incorrectly that people would click the link and go and actually read what I've written in the petition. Apparently not. It's much easier to just get enraged and then start abusing me in the comments of whichever platform they're on, which is all good fun. I've been having a bit of sport with some of them over the last week. But I think the important thing to note here is the details of the petition that I've put forward. I'm not saying, oh, just open all the locked gates, give us access to everything, let us hunt everywhere, let us four-wheel drive wherever we want. What I'm actually asking for is for the government and for national parks to explain what their strategy is. Because at the moment, the response that we saw from Penny Sharp to Tony's petition was, we know what we're doing, get out of our way. And that's not acceptable. I don't think that's sufficient. National Parks is a taxpayer-funded organisation. They're civil servants at the end of the day. So for them to say, oh, it's none of your business, we just do what we do because we know best, that's not good enough for me. I want to know why they're closing particular areas. Why are they saying that four-wheel drives can't drive down a fire trail? Why can't hunters go and shoot feral animals on national parks land, but national parks will pay a pro shooter to shoot animals out of a helicopter at a cost of $5,000 an hour of taxpayers' money, shooting deer from a helicopter with a semi-automatic rifle. Now, I don't know how good a shot you are, but shooting animals on the move from a chopper, I reckon it'd be pretty messy. I don't think we're talking clean, ethical kills. And at $5,000 an hour, I'm sure they're not taking their time cleanly head shooting each of those animals. And I've heard from many people who have seen the aftermath of some of those culls. It's not nice. It's not clean. In New South Wales just last year, they did a pretty extensive cull of brumbies down in the Kosciuszko National Park, as I'm sure every one of your listeners would know.
Yep.
It's no coincidence that they shut that whole park down for 8 months while they did it. And I actually shot a commercial down there at the start of last year, and one of the guys who was working on that particular shoot does a lot of fly fishing, and he said that they'd done a previous brumby cull on a much smaller scale, and they'd dropped brumbies on hiking trails and just left them there. And then, hikers come for their nice walk through the national park in the Alpine region and come across a dead brumby, which can be quite confronting to a non-hunter. Yeah. So their solution was, we'll just shut the whole joint down and we'll shoot the shit out of it. But that's not good enough for me. So really what I'm talking about in this petition, and what I think we all should be pushing for nationwide, is transparency from those organisations. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What is your long-term strategy? Because it affects everyone.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And touching on that Brumby stuff, pretty sure I've seen posts about signs, if you record the colours, if you record the brumbies, there's going to be, fines and jail time and all of that stuff. It's crazy. Look, I'm not a horse person. I look at the brumbies, I see them as an introduced species. I think they should be culled. I think hunters should be allowed to go in there and shoot them if they choose to do so. It's organic meat. It's beautiful meat. It's a reason why it's eaten in a bunch of different countries. I hate seeing the waste. I understand why helicopter culling needs to be done, because there's all these places that are locked up and hunters can't get to, and then you add the trophy hunting aspect of hunters in, and they're letting does and fawns and young stags and bucks walk because they want the big stag. So rather than taking a deer every time they go out, they might take one deer every 10 or 15 or 20 trips. So yes, the numbers are going to explode that way, but it's absolutely crazy. And I'm not sure if you've seen the culling footage from down here in South Australia and how they go about it, but they have 3 guys with shotguns in the helicopter and 1 guy with a rifle, and they're just pumping rounds into the deer, with BBs, and they're shooting antlers off, and just filling these deer with pellet holes, and it's just absolutely crazy. And then they're leaving them there to rot and waste. It's just so disappointing to see. And it's funny that you don't hear a peep out of any of these animal rights activists. Soon as someone does something wrong in the hunting community, there's been this post in, I'm pretty sure it was New South Wales, about this guy shooting 98 kangaroos on government property. Yes, that's a shit look. Yes, must be a shit bloke, but the culling needs to be done. And as soon as something like that has happened, everyone's sooking and crying. But you get all these helicopter cullings where they're shooting, they do kangaroos out of the helicopters and that too in certain areas, but you don't hear a freaking peep out of the media. You don't hear a peep out of the animal activist. Like, it's just so crazy, and it's like they're pushing an agenda.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And I mean, for me, there's a couple of different issues with the helicopter culls, right? I hear what you're saying about trophy hunters letting deer walk. That's hard to explain. But I think for every trophy hunter that I know 2 or 3 that go out and shoot for me. And I think, like anything, if you opened it up to hunters, you're going to have an impact on the population. Shooting deer from a helicopter and leaving the bodies there, not utilising the meat, that's wasteful. In a country where there are still a lot of people living below the poverty line, there's a lack of good, clean protein for these people. I think that meat not being utilised is, well, I don't want to say criminal, but it's such a waste. But the other thing is, and I've known this from doing a lot of pest control work and doing kangaroo culls on various people's properties. I've gone out to mates' farms and dropped many, many kangaroos of a night. And 2 weeks later, it's like they were never there. And what's eating them? Feral pigs, wild dogs, cats, you name it. And I just think they're going in and they're shooting all these deer from a helicopter, and then they're leaving. So what's going to happen? It's going to actually help feed the other pest species, because there's nothing native that's going to eat them. The kangaroos and the wombats aren't going to be there eating them. So I just think it's a short-sighted and probably long-term ineffective way of going about it, and it's so costly. So my suggestion, and I'm sure it's something that you'd agree with really quickly, but why not do it on a controlled basis? Why not do it on a national park for a period? And if you want to make the most of it, how about you do it during a rut? And then you're going to get the maximum amount of deer shot during that period. Or, do it via a ballot system. Do it under tags like they do in the United States. Like, there are ways around it. And I think utilising the resource, like we do in state forests in New South Wales, is a far better option than just going and shooting them and letting them rot on the ground.
Yeah, that's it. Like, bring a license for it. Bring in, like the R license. Utilize that type of system. Victoria has the best system in Australia, where you get your deer stalking permit, your hunting permit, and you can go in on thousands and thousands of acres of public land. You just park your car and you use the app and you walk in. Like, it's absolutely incredible. I'm not sure if you've spent any time down there, but it's just spectacular.
I have, but I haven't done any hunting down there, but I've definitely done some four-wheel driving and touring through the Vic High Country, and man, it's some of the most spectacular country that we have in Australia. I guess what they have down there is awesome for now.
Yes.
And that's the real risk, and that's what, Carly and lots of others down in Victoria are up against at the moment. The Great Victorian National Park, or whatever they're trying to call it down there. It's the same thing as we're facing up here in New South Wales, and I think across the country we're facing a reduction in our access. And every time we lose a state forest or there's a change in legislation and it goes under national parks management, it just means a reduction in access for outdoor recreation, which is shit.
It's crazy. Like, growing up, if you asked me what I wanted to be a park ranger. That's what I wanted to be. And it's not one of these, greeny hippy dippy park rangers that, want to be out there and stop people from doing stuff. I love the outdoors. I loved hunting. I loved fishing. I love camping. I want people to experience all of that. And that's what I wanted to be a park ranger for. But then like getting to that age and looking into it, it's like, shit, you spend 85% of your time in an office, and then you're finding people for doing things that you're not allowed to do in national parks, which is camping, which is, foraging, which is, hunting. Like, this is the stuff that should be allowed. It's absolutely crazy.
Not just allowed, it should be encouraged. It should be encouraged. It's good for people. It's good for their mental health. It's good for their general health and well-being. We've got an obesity problem in Australia. Like, get people out of their houses, get them off the couch, get them out in the bush, get them walking, get them understanding and getting closer to it. And I think that's really what I've been up against with this petition. Is a lot of the commentary I've had from people who are opposed to it. They're saying, oh, they should be locked. We should lock more of them because you guys can't be trusted. And, people dump rubbish. Well, yeah, sure, people do dump rubbish, but it's not hunters and four-wheel drivers that are out there dumping building waste. It's businesses. Yeah. So why not punish them and punish them properly? Like, I'm not talking about $1,000 fine. Like, make it $100,000 fine. And then you've only got to hand out a few of them, and all of a sudden it starts funding itself. You got more rangers out there enforcing it. And by providing access to a wider group of people, you've got more eyeballs on the area. So, a locked gate is all well and good, but if someone wants to go dump rubbish, they'll just, in my experience, dump it 100 metres down the road. They'll just find somewhere out of the way to dump it. If people are doing the wrong thing in four-wheel drives, well, educate them. Get more rangers out there. Look at permit systems. I'm the first one to say, give me access to an area. I'll give you my name, my address, my vehicle details, and a signed undertaking saying I'm not going to trash anything. I'm not going to drive off the tracks. If it's wet, I'm not going in there. I'm not going to leave any rubbish. And if I do any of those things, fine me. Remove me from the system. Say that I'm never allowed to go in there again. And I think this is what we've got to come to, is a bit of give and take. Because at the moment, the strategy is just lock it and leave it and you're not welcome in here. That's not acceptable to me. And that actually encourages people to do the wrong thing.
Yeah. That's...
So one of the things that I'm trying really hard, I'm begging my followers and my supporters to stop is, just take your angle grinder and cut the padlock. It's like, stop saying that. You're just giving the people who are against what we want more ammunition. Stop doing that stuff. When I go and have a meeting with national parks, and they show me a series of gates that have been ripped out of the ground by four-wheel drives with winches or padlocks cut. Like, how do you argue with that?
Yeah.
You say, that's only a small portion of the community. Yeah, but they're still part of the community. That's why we lock the gates. Now, it's a circular argument. You lock them, they're going to cut them. So
I get
put more gates in, they'll cut them. But, I think all of us have got a responsibility. And I think the more that we allow responsible bush users to access these areas, the better it can become.
It's funny, exactly what you're saying with the full drivers pulling out gates, and then you said, it's only a small portion of them. We had the exact same argument here with the bow hunting. It's like, it's not bow hunters shooting kangaroos with arrows. Like
No,
it's
it's dickheads.
it's dickheads buying a cheap, kids bow off of eBay or some shitty shop, or going to Cashies or Marketplace or whatever, and they're going out and shooting, wildlife because there's not enough education out there, and there's no public land for people who get a bow to go out there and learn to actually hunt introduced species. So it's the exact same thing, and we're seeing it on all aspects on fishing. So South Australia has just brought in new shark and stingray protection laws, and drop the limits of what you can take. It's like 1 shark land base and 2 shark combined on a boat, which is absolutely mental. And who's doing it? It's these national parks areas. It's absolutely mine. But then again, there's a popular beach on the York Peninsula, and Boxing Day someone caught an eagle ray, dragged it up on the sand and left it there to die. And now I think there's like $100,000 fine if you're caught doing that, or cutting the barbs off stingrays, or there's another lady, similar type of time frame on the Fleurieu Peninsula. She had a bronze whaler dumped on her driveway. Like, just someone, the shark's gone shit, so they pulled over and thrown it out because they didn't know what to do with it. And
that's the thing, man. Like, when we talk about this stuff, that sort of behaviour annoys me as much, if not more, than the locked gates and the restrictions. Because, like I said, we're just giving them ammunition, right? It's like you're loading the gun and handing it to them and saying, just take away more of our freedoms. And I think, man, I did dumb stuff when I was younger.
We all have.
I'm lucky in that I grew up before the internet and before camera phones. So a lot of my dumb stuff will remain unsaid and unseen. But I think, there's a couple of different aspects to it. It's education around the younger guys out there saying, hey, look, you don't have to post everything that you do on social media. You've only got to look at TikTok for examples of the stupidity.
Yeah.
But we're not the only ones that see it, right? And there's big community pages that share dumb stuff. And it's like, man, when you've got 1 million views on a video, you can be guaranteed that there are not 1 million people going, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. There's going to be people that are watching it because they hate it. But, I just think the enforcement should be so severe that it's a deterrent. And at the moment, it's not. For so many of these things. And when I say the enforcement's not severe, there's not enough of it. Like in New South Wales, I'm going to just make up a number here, but I think there's like 8 fisheries officers for the state of New South Wales. Like in terms of enforcement for recreation, it might be 10, but I remember reading it a while ago and it's such a small number. Where I live on the Central Coast, it's a beautiful place. And so lots of people come here on holidays. So right now, the area around where I live is a schmozzle. And there's lots of people here from Sydney, and there's people from all walks of life. And, maybe it's the one time a year they go fishing or whatever. But almost every time I go fishing, I see people taking undersized fish, taking species they're not supposed to, leaving rubbish, mistreating fish that they're putting back. So, they catch something that they think is an undesirable species and they throw it in a rock pool, or, there's no one there to enforce any of the laws. You go and speak to these people, which I've done a few times, and they either tell you where to go or they play dumb.
Yeah.
So there's no punishment for doing the wrong thing. And just to jump back for a second, talking about species-specific restrictions. I mentioned it earlier in the podcast around the blue groper ban in New South Wales, and something that you just said about the people shooting roos with bow and arrows aren't bow hunters. In New South Wales last year, an absolute dickhead speared a blue groper.
Yep.
Spearing blue groper has been illegal in this state since, I believe, the 1970s or 80s, because they used to spear the shit out of them and they nearly sent them extinct, because anyone that's done any diving would know blue groper are super inquisitive and they're territorial, so they're pretty easy to shoot. When you're diving, they'll literally swim up to you and look at you in the face. This bloke shot a blue groper with a spear gun which is illegal. The fine, if it's fully enforced, can be many thousands of dollars. He basically got off with a slap on the wrist. I think he got like a $300 fine, right? But the response from the DPI here, based on an emotional outburst from the Greens, was to enforce a no-take policy for line fishermen on blue groper. And in New South Wales, no take means no targeting the particular species. I do a lot of rock fishing. If you hook a blue groper, first and foremost, good luck landing the bloody thing. It's not like you accidentally catch a blue groper. They're big fish, they're powerful fish. You've got to actively be targeting them, and they're a catch and release species only. The knee-jerk reaction from the New South Wales government was to ban people targeting this fish because someone committed a crime.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. What makes sense is make an example of that dude, give him the biggest possible fine that you can, and educate people on why you shouldn't shoot blue groper with a friggin' spear gun. And I think it's all this sort of stuff that's just building, and people like you and I that are passionate about our given pursuits, and we're passionate about being responsible and doing the right thing. Like it sends you crazy when you see these responses from government. Mark Banasiak, who's a member of the Legislative Council here in New South Wales for the Shooters, Farmers, Fishers Party, questioned Tara Moriarty, who's the head of the DPI, in a Senate estimates hearing off the back of that blue groper ban. And it was a really powerful piece of politics. He started by holding up a photo of himself holding a female blue groper, which is a brown fish, and said, "Mrs. Moriarty, can you please identify the fish in this photo?" She couldn't answer the question. So she just enacted a no-take policy on a fish that she couldn't even identify. Yep. And when Mark pressed her on the reasons for that piece of legislation being pushed through so quickly, she admitted it was an emotional response to an outcry from the Greens. That's not how legislation in this country should be passed. I mean, we're supposed to be a democracy. That's insanity, right?
Passing shit on emotion rather than facts is, like you said, absolutely insane. And, you know, bringing it back to the blue groper and the spearing. One, the guy probably wasn't a spearo. He's gone and bought a spear. Wasn't even a spear gun. It was a pole spear, wasn't
spear.
it? Yeah, hand spear. So he's probably just gone to his local fishing shop, bought it, and he's gone, all right, I'm going to chuck some flippers on. He was also in a marine zone as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in a marine sanctuary.
Yeah, so there you go. He's gone in there. He's gone, oh, look, there's a big fish. I'm just going to spear it. He wouldn't have had any clue what it was. Second of all, it had a name. Like, it's one of these, it's Cecil the Lion all over again, you know. Once people put names to these animals, it's a big public outcry, you know. I remember watching all the videos on this particular subject and this fish, and it was just so freaking crazy. And, you know, like you said, they're an inquisitive animal. They're protected, like they're protective of their area. So, of course, they're going to swim up to you. And so what do animal rights people think that is? Oh, he's friendly. You know, he's come to say hello. He's playing games with me. He's been there every day. And, you know, it's just absolutely crazy. It's just, you know, bambifying these animals. You know, they put these human emotions to these animals that do not have these human emotions. It's a fish. It's protective. It's seeing what you are and why you're in its area. And it's just all these aspects under this one thing. And, you know, someone doing something illegal, someone doing something because he's not educated, doing it in an area where you're not supposed to do it, targeting a fish that you're not supposed to be. You know, it's just education is key for this type of thing. And, you know, bringing it back to locking gates and all of that, you're making reasonable men do unreasonable things because you're locking them out. Like, enough is enough. What's going to happen? People are going to crack the shits, and they're just going to start doing all these things that are now banned that they've always done because you're pushing them to the brink, you know? Like,
yeah, and I think, you know, without getting too carried away here, there is a very real consideration around mental health.
100%.
How many people do you know that hunt or fish or go for a drive in their four-wheel drive or, go for a hike up a mountain, do it for the benefit of their mental health? And you start locking these people out and saying, no, you can't do that based on emotion, not science.
Yeah.
Then the same government says, mental health is really important and we have a mental health crisis. And particularly for men in this country, we know that, the suicide rates among men are so much higher than for women. And, why aren't we encouraging people to do these things that are good for their mental health? You know what's good for mental health? Oxygen. Being in and around trees and nature. Like, we should be encouraging that stuff, not restricting it, not pushing people out of those areas.
So I've said it on this podcast before. Myself, I've never had any mental health issues. I've had family members commit suicide. I've had friends that have committed suicide, right? None of them have really been outdoorsy people. They're all locked up. If you look at the suicide rate in these animal rights, city-dwelling people, it is through the roof. Then you look at the suicide rate in people that are in the outdoors, they're full driving, they're fishing, they're camping, they're enjoying times with friends and family. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's a hell of a lot less than if you compare it to the animal liberationists and animal activists and all of that. So you tell me what's bad for you, being locked up and in a city and not enjoying the environment, or getting out there hunting, fishing, eating, freshly caught fish over a campfire, or, a fresh shot deer backstrap straight on cast iron, cooked on coals. You tell me what's better for you.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. I mean, for me, if I'm stressed from work or I've got some stuff going on, my escape from that and the time that I use to process those emotions and those thoughts is fishing. Yep. I go fishing solo all the time, and it's time in nature, standing on a rock ledge in front of the ocean, trying not to die, all that good stuff, but also just thinking time. And I can guarantee you, if I've had a bad week at work and I go fishing for a couple of hours, I come back and I have a completely different perspective on the problem. I'm calmer, I'm more relaxed, I'm happier.
Yeah, 100% the same. If I'm the same, whether it's going for a walk with my bow, even if I don't shoot anything, I see deer, let them walk, it's just same with a rifle. The amount of times I go for a walk with a rifle and I just sit there and watch deer, or sit there and watch something. If it's a fox, I'm going to shoot it, but I'm not always going to shoot a deer. I like watching animals. It's same with fishing. I've always got a fishing rod in my car. I drive a truck delivering plasterboard for a living. I go all around Adelaide Hills, Riverland. I've got a collapsible rod and a hand reel in my work bag, because if I rock up to the river and the customer's not there, I'm chucking corn on my hook and I'm going for a fish. Or if I've got a trip, like a job 2.5 hours away, and it's right by the ocean, what am I going to do for lunch and smoko? I'm going to pull up at the closest jetty and cast a few squid jags around, whether I catch something or not. They're like, if I'm not hunting or fishing or camping, I'm thinking about it. Like, that's my escape. That's why I've started this podcast, to talk to like-minded people who share the same passions and, the same enthusiasm for this lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And something that you just said then, I think really stood out. You can go for a walk with a bow. I can go for a walk with a gun. You might see an animal and not shoot it. And there's a perception out there that hunters are just like these bloodthirsty maniacs that'll shoot anything that moves. And something that I talk about with a lot of my mates that shoot, and similarly with the four-wheel drive community, four-wheel drivers, hunters, fishers, in the vast majority of cases, are actually the biggest conservationists out there. And you'd be insane not to be. Because if you go out and you shoot everything or kill all the fish or trash all of the trails in your four-wheel drive, well, there won't be anything left. So there's this perception, particularly from the far left, that we're all, out there to just destroy the environment, but it's not the case at all. Everyone that I know that's involved in hunting has a deep respect for the animals that they're killing, and they're killing them for a reason. Generally, they're introduced pest species, or they're causing a particular problem in a particular area, and they're doing it within the bounds of the law. Or I just think that there's this really bad perception of a lot of us, and that's what we've really got to work as a community to overcome. And when I say a community, I mean the outdoor recreation community. Yep. All of us together. We've all got to do the right thing in terms of portraying the fact that we do care and that we are responsible, because otherwise it's just going to keep giving more and more ammunition to be thrown back in our faces when we try and stand up for ourselves.
Yeah, that's it. And, something you said earlier about people dumping rubbish, like you said, it's not people that are going out there and enjoying the great outdoors. It could be like, you get people trashing campsites. Usually that's, bunch of teenagers coming up for a night, getting on the piss, never really been camping, bought a, $100 swag from, any given shop, and they're out there for the night, and they might go 1 or 2 times a year and they trash things. But who goes and picks all that rubbish up? The next person that goes there and uses it, who goes to the bush regularly. How often do you bring other people's trash back from, camping?
Every single time. Every single time. And even when, like fishing, the other day we pulled the boat in and my wife was like helping empty the boat, and she's like, "What is all this?" And I said, "Oh, that's rubbish that I pulled out of the water." And she goes, "Well, it's not ours." And I said, "Yeah, that's right." She just shook her head, not because I picked it up, but just because, where we were out in the boat, it's like such a pristine environment. Also a national park, I might add, but still with rubbish. And it's, we're out there all the time. We see the reality of it. We don't want to see rubbish there. The last thing I want to see when I get to a really nice campsite is a pile of broken glass. It drives me nuts. But I can guarantee you that never in all my years of four-wheel driving and camping have I taken a trailer load of asbestos to dump in the bush. Yet I see that everywhere. And we cop the blame for it. It's not us. But what we need to make sure as a community is that we are not leaving bottles and cans and broken marquees or broken cheap swags. We've got to make sure that as a community we really step up. And even if you do see rubbish that's not yours, chuck it in the bin bag, take it home. Like, if we all did that, we'd make a really big dent in the problem, I believe.
That's it. Now, speaking on that, it's just refresh my mind. I got a message from Wild Food Meister. What's his name?
The fellow that runs Alex, the courses, right?
Alex Sharing. He has sent me a bunch of Clean Up Australia Day stuff for a bunch of New South Wales state forests. I'll be doing a post in a couple weeks for it. But he's got about 5 different links to different state forests in New South Wales where they're hosting Clean Up Australia Day to go up and clean up rubbish in these areas, which is freaking fantastic. As soon as he told me about it, I'm just like, that is such a great idea. And I'm like, tell me what to do. I'll share it. Come on, talk about it. Do whatever you want. I'll help you as much as you can to get the word out there for it. But yeah, that's something to keep an eye out for, all of your listeners, for Clean Up Australia Day, and get out there, show people that we're not who they think we are, that we go out, we clean up, we, restore habitat like duck hunters do, it's absolutely a great idea. Sorry, I just, when you were speaking about that, it just popped into my mind. I'll try and get him on the podcast to speak about it, and I'll do a few posts about it coming up to it, but it's something that's spectacular.
No need to apologise at all, mate. I saw a couple of posts about that initiative, and I think it's fantastic. And he's got a couple of guys that I know from the four-wheel drive industry that actually work for pretty sizable companies that earn an income from four-wheel driving. And they've stepped up and they're coordinating some of those cleanup sites. And I think it's such a good initiative. And the more of that stuff that we do, the better. It shows that the community cares, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And it shouldn't just be New South Wales. I'm saying it here. We should organise stuff Australia-wide for it, but make it known that this is for driving groups, hunting groups, fishing groups, and get the word out there, like message this stuff to news organisations and try and get out and do something. Like, even today going to the river, telling my kids to walk up and put stuff in the bin, they're sooking and moaning, and I'm like, oh, there's a piece of rubbish there on the ground that's not ours. And they're like, yeah, but it's not ours. I'm like, pick it up, put it in the bin anyway. Like I'm teaching them not to walk past rubbish on the ground. Pick it up, put it in the bin. If we've got a bag, chuck it in the bag, and we'll chuck it in at home. It's just something we all need to do.
Yeah, and again, it's about teaching kids at a young age. Like, if you see something on the ground, just pick it up. I shot a podcast earlier or last year with Bo Langford from Outback Cleanups, and he's a phenomenal dude who basically has just dedicated his life to picking up rubbish from bush, beach, and marine. Is his kind of remit. So he's doing everything. It's not just one particular area.
Yeah.
And the reason he's doing that is because he likes ball driving, he likes camping, and he likes fishing. So he's in these environments and he sees all this rubbish. And he said something that really stuck with me and was super pertinent. And that was that at school, we were taught that picking up rubbish was a punishment. So I've got ADHD, so I am a naughty kid, or I was a naughty kid, and I definitely did not like school. So I was in trouble all the time. And we were punished by being told to pick up rubbish. So from a very young age, it was ingrained in us that picking up rubbish was bad, or it was a negative thing. And Bo said we should flip that on its head and reward kids for picking up rubbish and really encourage them to do it and stop making it a punishment. And it really stuck with me. And I think about that all the time. It's like, you got to encourage kids, and no, this is a good thing that we're doing. We're making things better.
That's hilarious. It's funny you say that, because I don't have ADHD, but I was the kid that stared out the window, watching birds out the window, watching, if lizards, spiders, picking all of that stuff up. So I had to pick up rubbish. But I think it was reception, maybe year 1. Mum got a call. We can't find Zach. And she's like, what do you mean you can't find him? So what happened was our school backed onto a creek. I'd wandered down to the creek and I was catching bugs and lizards, but picking up rubbish from the creek. And the whole school was out searching for me, and I was in this creek behind the school picking up rubbish.
So you're one of the good ones. I was the naughty kid that was picking up rubbish because I'd done something wrong. I was just disrupting others usually.
I had my fair share of that too, But yeah,
again, it's a whole change in mindset, right? It's a change in mentality.
Yeah, it is, and that it's amazing. This last year, we've had a bunch of people coming out and talking about all of these issues. There's some great people I'd love to put you in contact with. There's a girl from South Australia. She was from WA, she was born in South Australia, moved to WA, and then moved back to South Australia because the WA wouldn't let her get a firearms license because they found her too much of a threat because she was running against the she ran in the parliament there or whatever it was against the firearm regulations, and they're like, no, you're too libertarian, you're too vocal, we don't like you're not getting your firearms license. So I got Kate to come on, and she's started her own podcast since then. I'm not sure if you've spoken to Maddie, who Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast. He's doing some great stuff, and he's he's actually around your areas,
that's true.
That area. So he would be a great one for you to chat to as well. But there is so many people coming out and talking about all of this stuff at the moment. There's a couple of guys up in Queensland. You've got the Hunters Campfire Crew. They've got a podcast. They do awesome entertainment stuff. There's 3 of them, and then you've got Wild Game Open Flame. He's doing awesome stuff as well. He's doing hunt schools and stuff like that. Then same as Alex, the Wild Food Master, he's doing hunt schools. You've got people down in Victoria like Carly doing absolutely amazing stuff, and we're starting to get the word out there, which is fantastic to see, and we're slowly working together, which is what we need. We need people from the full drive scene to, there's Marcus down in Victoria as well. He's started a full driving TikTok page, and he chats about all of this stuff, and he does absolutely fantastic stuff, and he's teamed up with Carly and done a bunch of stuff on his TikTok, and it's just so great to see. And it doesn't matter if you like hunting or not. If you are a recreational bush user, you need to get behind this stuff, because first it's going to be bow hunting, then it's going to be duck hunting, then it's going to be deer hunting, then it's all firearm, it's all hunting, then it's full driving, then it's mountain biking, then it's bushwalking, then it's foraging. Like it's all going to go if we don't rally up and stand behind these people that are speaking up and tell the politicians who they work for and where to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. And I think the thing that we're learning very quickly, as I said myself, I've been on a steep learning curve, but something that Carly's done really well down in Victoria is you can bitch and moan about this stuff and complain and whinge all you like, but you've got to play the game. And there's no point in just saying, the politicians are stupid, and then, it doesn't achieve anything. It might make you feel good for 5 seconds, but it doesn't actually achieve anything. We've got to play the game. We've got to go through the official channels. There are avenues to challenge this stuff, but you've got to do it the right way. It's got to be respectful. And even with some of the absolute lunatics that I've had to deal with over the last week, I've really tried as hard as I can to be respectful, because they're not. And I mean, you alluded to it earlier in the chat, mate. Some of the messages that I've got have been disgusting, quite frankly. And I'm not having a whinge. Like, I'm a big boy. I got a thick skin, right? I wouldn't have stuck my neck out and done this if I was worried about it. But I just don't understand why people just resort to personal attacks and insults and, saying things about your family or whatever it may be. But for us to be taken seriously and for us to remain credible, we got to take the moral high ground. Don't lower yourselves to their level and start throwing insults and swearing and carrying on. Look, I swear like the best of them when I'm out in the bush with a couple of the boys, but if you're trying to be taken seriously and you're trying to effect change, just take a second to think about it, I guess, would be my message. And absolutely don't stoop to the level of some of these maniacs who are out there abusing people and sending them messages telling them to kill themselves, and some of the other lovely things that I've experienced just in the last week.
Yeah, look, it is hard. It's I'm like myself, I get very emotional when it comes to, getting locked out and, hunting bans and fishing bans, and because it's my way of life. So, especially when I was younger, 17, 18, people like, you're a fucking idiot for hunting. I'd go straight on the attack, as we all have, because your emotions get the best of you, and that's what they're doing as well. They're seeing something they don't like. They're attacking, like that's the first thing that comes to their mind. But if you call them up on their attack and you speak reasonable to them, so a few years ago I posted a bunch of photos of some cats that I shot with a bow on a bunch of hunting pages. Animal activists, they got hold of them. Next minute I was being doxxed by Anonymous. I was getting thousands of messages a week, getting threatened to be killed every way you can think of. Cops rock up to my house, to chat about it. And it's just, it blew up. And, Joe Rogan spoke about it on his podcast on one of the episodes. It was shared freaking everywhere. And, at first, like, you have some fun with some of the people. But, there was a few reasonable ones that I actually had conversations. I'm like, well, look, they're introduced, they're killing native animals. I was sending them a bunch of information, and they're like, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't look at it like that. I thought you were just some psycho killing cats in a suburb. I didn't realize it was like that. But I was getting messages from South Africa, from Spain, from all over the US, from all over Europe, and there's actually a few people I'm still friends with on Facebook because they threatened me straight, like, to start off with, and called me names, and then we got chatting about it, and they've apologized. They're like, look, I don't agree with it, but I understand why you do it. I don't understand why you take photos and post them on Facebook, but I understand why you do it, and I respect you for doing it, and thank you for educating me. And if we can, like, not everyone's going to change their opinion, but if you can educate those few that are on the fence or who don't know, they're going to go to their friend and say, hey, I was wrong about this. Maybe you should have a think about it too. And it's just going to be a chain effect.
Yeah, man, spot on. I'm yet to have anyone apologise for saying dumb shit that I've then tried to educate them on, but I live in hope. But what you said there was really, really accurate. With some of the stupidity that I've encountered in the last week, and when I say stupidity, I'm not saying these people are stupid because they have a different opinion to me. I'm saying their opinion is wrong because it's based on things that are not factually correct.
Emotions.
Yeah, and I'm challenging these people, but I'm doing it respectfully. And I've had a number of them say, oh, you just go drive in the state forests. I'm like, yeah, cool, but state forests are being handed over to national parks. Oh, as if that would ever happen. And then I hit them with a whole bunch of examples of where it has happened, and they go, oh, I didn't know that. Good luck with your petition. It's like, okay, so it's not really an apology, but they had a point of view that was incorrect. And then I've educated them. And I think the more we do that, the better. Arguing with them and calling them names isn't going to fix anything. It's just going to embed that us versus them mentality. And I think what you just said there is so accurate, right? Take the time to educate people. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they get all their information from TikTok. So maybe that's the forum that you need to provide that information to them in.
That's hard. It's hard with the hunting space on TikTok because TikTok regulates everything. Like anything hunting related, I get no views on pretty much straight away. So I've pretty much stopped posting to TikTok. For you doing podcast clips because you do yours video, it's awesome for that. But I still get emotional when it comes to some stuff, and it's not so much emotional of people who don't know what they're talking about and it's trying to educate them. It's the people that know what they're talking about, yet they're still spreading misinformation. Like bringing it back to the South Australian bow hunting ban. Susan Close was on a radio station here, and she's gone, every other state's banned bow hunting. It's only South Australia and Victoria that have it. It's this, it's that, And I've rang up the radio station and I was furious. Like you could hear it in my voice, and they ended up hanging up on me because I wasn't swearing, I wasn't being a dickhead, but I was I was on the attack. I'm just like, she is wrong. She is spreading misinformation. And I was ranting, and I was still going. And then I just heard that beep, beep. And I was, I was ready. Like I was working. I was ready to drive down to the radio station and be like, what the fuck? Like I was so upset. I also passed Susan Close while I was working one day, and I paced up and down my truck. Like, I'm like, if I walk up to her, I'm going to lose my job. I cannot.
Yeah.
It's so hard because I am very emotional when it comes to this stuff because it is my life. It's not my passion. It's my life. Like,
yeah. Nah, I totally understand, man. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm like some special person that doesn't get emotional and lose their temper. I absolutely do. But call it, maybe it's age, maybe it's maturity, maybe it's experience, but I just know that it's not going to achieve anything. Yeah. And at the moment, I'm trying to really look at a much bigger picture. And so a few times, even this week, I've gone to type a response to someone and then gone, probably don't press post on that one. Like, you know, I can be a smart ass, but like, don't, as I said before, lower yourselves to their standards, right? Like it's, but it is hard. It's hard when you're passionate about something. If I wasn't passionate about the outdoors, I wouldn't have bloody launched this petition in the first place, you know. But anyway, look, I think, you know, we've talked about it a lot, but I guess what you said just a little while ago, there's a lot of really good stuff happening all over the country at the moment. It's really reassuring for me that people are starting to step up and you know, people care. I know that people care, but it's really impressing me that people are sticking their necks out and going, nah, this isn't good enough. We've got to stand up for ourselves. I think it gives me a little bit of comfort that maybe the battle's not over just yet. Maybe we've got a chance.
Yeah, man, that's it. Look, I haven't stuck to the question sheet, you know. We've gone completely freestyle, but there is two questions, well, actually 3 questions that I'd like to quickly ask you before I let you go. If you could change one thing about, you know, hunters, anglers, full drivers, let's just say outdoor enthusiasts, what would you change about them to make things better?
About the community themselves? Oh, man. Post less dumb shit on social media.
Yep.
Like, you know, far out, man. If you want to go do donuts in your car, do it on a private property somewhere. Don't film it. Don't put it on social, because context is everything, right? Yep. It's like you described with your cats. It's like you were doing the right thing. You were doing something positive. But someone in Spain or South Africa doesn't know that. Maybe cats are sacred in Spain. I don't know. Don't post dumb shit on social media. In fact, just post less on social media. Go out and live.
Yep, no, that's fair. And what would you do for the outdoor community to be better represented in the media? Not social media, but in the media. What can we do to make ourselves look better?
I'm going to answer that indirectly and probably not even answer that the way you want me to. Traditional media is becoming less and less relevant every single day, my friend, and particularly with people who are not boomers. So sorry to any of your older listeners. I know that can be a somewhat triggering term, but look, I'm not particularly young. I'm nearly 40 myself, right? But people aren't watching 7, 9 news anymore if they're under 40, dare I say it. Maybe they are. I'm generalizing. But social media is so important, and this form of media is so important for us in terms of the outdoor recreation community. So what I encourage people to do is, I don't even know if a current affair is still on. I'm guessing it probably is. Don't watch that shit. It's rubbish. It's intended to upset you.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. Do your own research. Listen to people who know what they're talking about on a particular topic. Listen to opposing viewpoints and then formulate your own opinion rather than being told what the mainstream media wants you to believe.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome, and I'm going to have to change that question for future podcasts based on that answer, because yeah, you've made really good points that, you know, I can't tell you the last time I watched normal freaking TV. You know, I do get my news through social media, and it is the clickbaity shit. And that's more what I was thinking in my head. Like, you know, you click on an article, you know, man spears named blue groper in, you know, like how can we put positive stuff out there. But yeah, no, I'm going to change that question up for the future because you've ruined that one for me.
Sorry, mate.
Nah, all good, all good. And finally, in your own words, what does outdoor recreation mean to you?
Good question. It means everything. That's the time that I get to spend with my family where I'm disconnected from the internet. I'm disconnected from the outside world. I work in marketing, so a large portion of my time is spent on social media for work. I have a podcast that I promote via social media. So if I'm not filming or editing or working in marketing or doing something to do with the computer, I'm happy. So outdoor recreation for me is peace and happiness with my family out in the bush in nature. Yeah, it's the best.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. Well, I want to say thank you, Tony, for coming on. If people have enjoyed what they've heard, where can they go find you if they're not following you already?
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully it wasn't too political for your listeners, but I think it's worth being talked about. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the Outerside Podcast. And I also do video versions of my podcast. So I release episodes every week, and it's just at the Outerside on YouTube. And if you prefer to listen to audio only, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you download your podcast from.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for chucking it up on TikTok and, making me aware of it. Because honestly, as soon as I found it, I tagged Carly in it. I tagged I tagged Marcus and a bunch of other people. Then I jumped straight across to Instagram, followed you there, shared it on the stories straight away. So I absolutely love what you're doing. Keep it up. I know it can be frustrating at times. I know it's frustrating when you're seeing the types of views that you're getting and you're not getting the numbers on the petitions that you want. I have found that, it might be across all communities, but, hunters and fishers and outdoorsmen can be quite picky when it comes to putting their details into a petition. Even though it takes 2 seconds to do, they'd much rather type a stupid comment on Facebook than take the time to do the petition. These things do work, and we as outdoorsmen and women need to get political. We need to fight to protect what we love.
Absolutely, man. And I think I said it at the start, maybe it was before we started recording, but I'm not interested in getting involved in politics, but I have, because we have to. You can't just let it go and hope that it's going to get better. It's not.
Yeah.
We've got to fight, and we've got to fight them in their own territory.
Yeah, exactly. And before I started this podcast, I hated politicians. I hated politics. I hated talking about it. I hated hearing about it. But now this podcast, every other episode, is chatting some form of politics and telling people to go sign petitions and take the time out to, write a letter to your local MPs. That is one of the best things you can do to save anything outdoor recreation you want. Look, I'm an idiot. I'm dyslexic as all hell. I can't write. My reading's better because of social media, but my grammar, my spelling, everything sucks. Write what you want. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about grammar. Copy paste it into ChatGPT.
Yep.
Say, fix this email up, make it sound professional, and within 2 seconds, you're going to have a really professional sounding email. You can chuck in all the, you can go over to the pages that tell you how the email needs to be written for it to be accepted. Copy that, chuck it into ChatGPT, chuck in your email that you've written, and it will put in all the details that you need in that email, and it will make it sound professional as. And that's one of the best things we can do. Don't send in an email where you're an idiot, why are you doing this? Help me, rah, rah, rah. Make it sound professional. ChatGPT takes freaking 5 seconds to do. It's so beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, like you said, don't get emotional. Ask them for the data. Ask them for the science. We got to talk about facts, right? Like, remove a bit of the emotion from it. You're going to make a decision? Cool. Show us the data that you used to formulate that. Oh, it's based on an opinion or an emotion. Doesn't pass the pub test, does it?
That's it. Well, thank you, Tony. I really, really appreciate you coming on, and it's been a bloody awesome chat.
No, good on you, Zach. It's been fun, man. And yeah, thanks again for having me.
Anytime you need help plugging anything, I don't have a massive following, but I'm happy to do anything I can to, help the greater outdoors.
Appreciate it.
All good. Thank you. Catch you next time. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Hunting Connection Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions and gained valuable insights into the world of hunting, fishing, and the outdoors. To stay connected with us and never miss out on an update, please be sure to follow us on social media, all at Hunting Connection Podcast. We appreciate your support and would love for you to share the podcast with your friends and family. Don't forget to tag us in your hunting photos on social media and let us know about your experiences. Your feedback is invaluable to us, so please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Together, we continue growing and delivering more captivating episodes for all hunting enthusiasts. Stay connected, stay informed, and keep pursuing your passion for the hunt. Until next time, happy hunting.